Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on Goliath Resources. Goliath is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker GOT and on the OTCQB under the ticker GOTRF. And I'm joined today with the founder and CEO of Goliath Resources, Roger Rosmus. And Roger, hey, it's great to get you back on the show after about a month away. And you put out a couple news releases that are peppered with a lot of different holes. Now, some of the holes you put out in July and later in the month and then in August, just on a press release that you just released to the market on the 26th, have some relogged holes, some of the old holes where you're re-assaying them or maybe didn't assay because you have this new understanding. And there's new holes. And so far in the program, you have drilled 65 new holes this year for a total of 45,000 meters. Now, you have about 50 holes remaining with 15,000 meters. You got about 55 drill holes that are waiting for assays to be returned. And then again, once in a while, you have these relogged holes that are popping in here. So I guess before we dig into some of the individual holes, just from a high level, what is the picture that's coming together as more data comes in?
Hey, Shad. Yeah, thanks for having me back on. And yeah, it's been a bit here. We've been busy and hectic as we're talking off mic there, but everything's fantastic. We continue to see, again, lots of visible gold that we can see with the naked eye, call it the VGNE. And it went actually changed our ticker to that, but no, just kidding. But yeah, certainly with the relogging, we've had some excellent success with the strongly calc-silicate altered andesite, breccias, and so on that, again, weren't really identified as possibly hosting high-grade gold, which clearly, we've demonstrated that this year, being this last press release, hole 277 from 2024. I mean, that ran just over 12 grams gold only, by the way. We don't have the multi-element for that, but that was 6 meters. So, and that's a really decent hole. And then the big overview here is we've got, we're going to drill probably 115 holes total this year in 2025, of which we've only announced 7. So we have this massive pipeline of, I guess, news flow, a potential news flow coming down the line with, over almost 100 and whatever, 108 holes, assays coming as well, with some of the relog as well that are in the queue somewhere. So I expect it's going to be very busy, through the rest of the season here and into, possibly into the fall and into the new year with assays coming. So it's pretty exciting times. The guys are doing an awesome job on the site. The entire team has really been digging in here. The weather hasn't been the greatest, but luckily now we're seeing some nice plus 20 sunny weather and higher lows through the night as well. So with the timeline approaching, into kind of getting into September here now, next week, we should be able to crack off the balance of the 15,000 meters and possibly drill even some more if we possibly, if Mother Nature allows us.
Well, fingers crossed the good weather trend continues so the team on the ground can keep the drill bits turning. Well, so one of the things that strikes me compared to talking with other companies is that you have a 100% hit rate. Most companies don't have anywhere close to that. So that just talks to the understanding the exploration team has of the geological model and the fact that 95% of the holes have contained visible gold. Like you say, visible gold to the naked eye. I don't know that maybe that would be a good stock symbol, but uh, when you look at the hit rate, I mean, I guess what stands out to me is that you have this model dialed in on both fronts. You understand the multiple stacked shear zones now and the different lenses of mineralization, and then you also understand this reduced intrusion process, which over the last year or two, your team has really come to understand that even better. Anything else you want to add as far as the geological understanding or what you're hearing from the field from your geologists?
Yeah, just we're seeing mineralization, high grade gold with minable widths in 3 distinct rock packages. We've got the quartz sulfide breccia stockwork, which in the shears, and then we've got the reduced intrusive Eocene age dikes, and then we've got this silicate altered breccia and andesite. So it's pretty exciting, and hence the fact we're hitting now 100% hit rate here, and just the nature of the stack zones. We'll continue on. And, bottom line is with another, all these holes remaining with the percentage of VG, obviously it's a good telltale as to, whether these holes are going to run. So I suspect we should continue to have decent results from here. This last hole that we announced here, 337, great result, 10.6 grams over almost 23 meters. Fantastic holes, like 242 gram meter hole. And, back in the day, 100 gram meter hole was, people would go gangbusters. At the end of the day, I mean, you can't build a resource or deposit or mine with one big, let's say, one good hole. You need multiple holes. A good example that someone gave me the thought of, hey, you can't build a sawmill with one big giant tree. You need a whole forest of trees to make that happen. And in respect, the size of this area that the Surebet discovery is like 1.8 square kilometer, which is really more than half the size of Central Park in New York City. So, we'll continue to drill. I'm sure, we'll get some super high grade holes and we'll get some okay holes as well. But at the end of the day, it's going to be, the full addition of every hole, what it's going to contribute to each load that we're seeing at the Surebet discovery.
Well, you raise an interesting point here, Roger, about the reaction the market has to holes as a program like this gets bigger and expands and keeps adding to it. I mean, one could argue that you've had a nice valuation in the stock for some time now, but there's this desensitizing factor that some market participants have when they keep seeing good results put out over and over again. So maybe we could just talk about that briefly to the point you made about hole 337. 10.6 grams per ton gold over 22.82 meters is a 240 gram per ton gold hit. Now, if that was a brand new Explorer and that was, a hole they put out, people would be flipping out over this hole. But this is just par for the course here. And so as you put out these big holes of grade and width, we've talked about it being mineable grade and mineable width, but some of these holes border on getting into the Bonanza gold area. And I don't mean your Bonanza share, I just mean Bonanza gold grades. So how can you talk to investors now about not getting fatigued about these results, but seeing them each as figuring in and factoring into really understanding not just the geological model, but how these resources are going to be growing over time?
Yeah, I mean, with every new pierce point that's got gold in it, again, with mineable widths, mineable grades. And I mean, you and I, we've been talking for, I don't know, maybe 3 years now. And I've always said, at the end of the day, if the whole system is average grade of, our average width of kind of 5 to 7 meters and average grade of 5 to 7 grams gold equivalency, and then just of that whole area, that 1.8 square kilometer, again, think of the size of Central Park in New York City. I mean, this thing's has certainly the potential to be a massive deposit and a mine at some future point, and I do believe this will be a mine down the road.
Well, the other thing that you brought up, I think is worth highlighting, is that you haven't done the multi-element testing on some of these holes yet. So in addition to gold, you do have a lot of copper in this system, and you have other metals. What other metals are germane to the overall makeup? I mean, copper probably being first and foremost, but do you have a lot of silver? Are there other metals that you think are worth noting that will complement the gold?
Definitely. I mean, we've got silver, we've got copper, we got zinc and lead. So obviously that's going to add some items there as well. In addition, I mean, we do have some of the critical elements, minerals, obviously that everyone's been searching for. Is the source going to be a higher grade of those? We're not sure. And on that point, one of the targets for this year is this mother lode intrusive. If we hit it, great. If not this year, what we've developed and drilled to date is pretty significant as is, even without, let's say, drilling into the source of the system here. If you look at even the Pogo mine up in the Yukon there, the things produce over 10 million ounces and they've never found the source, but super high grade, and they just continue to mine it and make a ton of money.
Well, that point you're making about, you already have plenty, even if you don't find the source. I think people would love you to find the source, though. We've talked about it that it could be at depth, but we've also talked that it could be over to the side orientation. And so I'm still curious if you're going to put a hole or two into that big Pluton that could be, it's a reduced intrusion area. It could be one of the sources. And before it's been ignored because the people thought there was no gold in it. Are you going to get a couple holes into that this year?
As we speak, actually. So we're definitely, personally, I would love to find the source, and assuming it is mineralized or it's got economical grades, that'd be fantastic and be great for the shareholders alike. And we'll continue to search. Again, it could be at depth or laterally. We are drill. It's got the Hyder Pluton, which I think you're referring to there to the west. We actually had a bit of a sniff there quite a few years ago, and when we drilled, it was lower grade, and we just kind of didn't really give it much thought. Or I mean, we obviously gave it thought, but thinking, okay, we're looking for the higher grade type of situation here. But the fact now that we understand more about the entire system and what this reduced intrusive type of mineralization could mean, maybe it is the hider that's been looking at us. We've been staring at it for the last 5 years.
Yeah, just curious. It's one of those curiosity questions, and we'll wait and see what comes from it. And I didn't realize you were drilling it now, so that's cool. But we'll see what the assays come back as. But just to the point about the understanding of the reduced intrusion mineralization in the dikes and some of the relogging efforts, we didn't really talk after the press release that you put out on July the 28th. But if we just circle back to that one, you had some holes in here, like hole 317, where it had over 3 grams per ton gold over 18 meters, 5 grams over 11 meters. You had another hole in here, 302, that had 2.26 grams over 19 meters, 6 grams over 6 meters, 8 grams over 4 meters. So when you see those, people may not do cartwheels in the aisle over that, but those are big, wide intersects. So from a development standpoint, I think sometimes those holes are actually better for kind of gluing this all together with some continuity. Maybe speak to some of the relogging efforts and how, first of all, there's gold there and you didn't know it, but second of all, some of these wide intercepts are pretty impressive.
Yeah, again, going back to the reference of, you need multiple holes, you need that continuity. Every hole is not going to be a 100 gram meter or a 1,000 gram meter. Let's say, a 6 by 6 is a 36 gram meter hole. If you got a whole whack of those, guess what? That's going to be a mine, right? As far as the relog, yeah, that's been completed, and or just waiting for assays to come through on that. And the photon is typically fairly quick. The multi-element obviously is taking some time. Now, we're kind of full season here with multiple companies drilling, with I'm sure thousands of meters hitting their front doorstep on a daily basis.
Well, so to that point, considering the amount of holes you have at the lab that are new holes, in addition to the relogging holes, and in addition to the fact that you're still drilling a lot of holes, do you think the news flow here is just going to stretch out through the whole winter time?
I would imagine so. Like, definitely. It's, I mean, we've only announced, again, 7 holes. We got 100. Well, the target is 115. So that would mean that there's 108. They're on the come here. And certainly of the 65 we've drilled thus far, or that we announced, 95% have VG in them, visible gold. So probably high probability. If I was a betting man, guess what? We're probably going to have some very similar results, coming soon to a theater near you.
Well, we'll be watching that theater for the preview of coming attractions. And now, when you start putting all these data in, and when you get all this data set back from this year's drill program, you'll have done a number of seasons. I think we actually started talking back in 2022, but then in 2023, you really started hitting your stride. Last year, you really kind of broke out with the understanding going down into the Golden Gate zone and drilling deeper, and then again starting to learn about this reduced intrusion system. And then in 2025, you've just been gloves off, pedal to the metal, making it happen. All that's a lot of data, and I continue to get people emailing me, Roger, asking about, is there enough drilling density? Is there enough data points and pierce points to start wrapping a resource around this? Now, so far, it's been too early to do so, but at the end of this big program, because it's going to be a monster program, do you think you'll have enough data where you'll want to put out a resource, or is it better just to keep drilling?
Well, good questions. I get that all the time. Right now, like, think about it. We still don't know how big the system is. It still remains wide open. So, logically, why would you put a fence around this thing when we know it's bigger, it's open, and requires more drilling? So, until that time where we feel that, we've maxed out as far as putting a fence around the mineralization, then I think at that point, then it would make sense to put together an MRE. Certainly coming out of the season with some of the pierce points we're getting, there'll definitely be certain areas, primarily in the Bonanza, the higher grade Bonanza area, veins, as well as Surebet, where, anyone can do a back of the envelope calculation as a guesstimate as to what might be in that just one particular lode within that one particular area. As an example, we've got a 300 by 300 meter spacing roughly, where we've got some fairly tight pierce points where, we're hoping to show some super high grade zone that could possibly pay for a capex out of the gate, if it was to go into production. And then surrounding that, there's about a kilometer by kilometer area of, again, not as tight pierce points, but certainly increase the confidence level that the continuity is there and get sort of like an average grade, average width with that in both of those sections of the load. So that certainly is part of the target, or let's call it the focus of this drilling this year, in addition to the other items that we've mentioned in various press releases.
Well, maybe just one more on this year's drilling. In the past, you had limited access to certain areas due to where the pads were placed. And this year, you're able to put the pads closer to the valley floor, or you had just a lot more options this year. So maybe speak to the orientation of where you're going to be drilling from, or some of these holes that haven't even been released yet, that you're able to access different parts of the system with all the science in your back pocket, but also accessing different parts with where the drill pads were located. Maybe speak to that as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, every year we're always looking for new areas that we can put up, build safely. Additional pads, a lot of the pads we reused, and where we're drilling, 5, 6 holes from each pad type of thing, if we're, sort of peppering a particular area. And then obviously looking to step out, increase the area. Like as an example, I guess about 3 or 4 press releases ago, we expanded the Bonanza about 500 meters to the northwest there. So these are just some things that, as we're moving out again, just showing that the system is much bigger than we currently knew about, coming into 2025. And hopefully, those will run. And then looking forward to 2026, we'll just continue to expand. And then, like I say, if we can able to put a fence around this, then, we'll be looking at that MRE, that next step.
Well, and just one final comment. You brought up 2026. I think it's germane to note that you've raised a lot of capital this year, and while that helps you get through this program, you already have some in the treasury to start off next season. So maybe to speak to the financial health of the company, some of the key stakeholders that participated to allow you to hit the ground running again next year too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so coming into the season, we had cash. I guess our balance sheet, I guess it was the first quarter in the calendar year of 2025. We had $10 million worth of McEwen stock, which is now worth 13.5 million. We still own it, so we made $3.5 million for the shareholders, non-dilutive, and obviously we'll trim that at the appropriate time. And then we had about around 10 million in cash. So coming into the season, we had 20 million. Then we went and raised the bought deal with Stifel Canada, 23 million bought deal. And then I did a sidecar, 4 million. Again, this all charity flow through. So we got a nice lift on the actual price of the stock with no warrant, and minimal dilution. I think we issued less than 10 million shares, which is again minimal dilution for the shareholders, and a fully funded program. And we're going to have a whack of money. Don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but we're going to be well capitalized going into 2026. So we won't have to be doing any Hail Mary deals or not bending on our knees here when it comes time to raise capital. So, we'll just let the news speak for itself. Let's see where the stock goes. I mean, it looks like today people are, I guess, have reread the press releases and kind of figuring like what the heck it all means with this success rate and what's on the, another, what I call 108 holes to come, with most likely vast majority having visible gold. Is, again, my guess is we're going to continue to see very similar results on a go-forward basis from the current drill program.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there for today, Roger. But nice to see the company in a position of strength financially and a position of strength geologically, where you have such a high hit rate. And if there's visible gold in those holes, we don't know what the gold values are yet, but we know they got gold in them, and they probably have other elements in them too. So there's going to be a string of news flow coming out from the company, probably as far as the eye can see. So we'll definitely keep following along with it here at the KE Report. And for those of you listening in, definitely click on the link below in the show notes. It takes you right over to the Goliath website, straight to their news section, where you can sign up for updates that hit your email inbox, or just follow along with the assays as they hit the wires. Roger, keep us posted. We'll get you back on for an update soon. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much, Shad. And perhaps we'll see you at Beaver Creek.